Got to get to this. Joining us right now here on the Cape Fear Sports Report on ESPN Radio is, of course, Tony Haynes of the Wolfpack Radio Network. Tony, how are you?
Doing great, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing all right. First of all, thank you for taking a couple of minutes here to join us on the show. And, obviously an unfortunate situation. Coach Kay Yow passing away over the weekend at the age of 66. And one thing that really kind of shook me a little bit was the way her peers and people around her in the industry talked about her. I mean, it was just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, she's been a respected member of the coaching fraternity for a long, long time. I mean, you really have to look back and put this into perspective. When she became the head women's basketball coach in NC State, Gerald Ford was the president.
Yeah. I
mean, she's outlasted 4 or 5 men's basketball coaches at NC State during her remarkable tenure, and she took over at NC State at a time when women's basketball, right before that period when women's basketball finally started to evolve and grow a little bit. You know, it wasn't until 1982 that the women had an NCAA tournament. So, I mean, she goes back at the very beginning when she started the women's program at NC State that, women's basketball was not getting a lot of publicity, a lot of promotion, and it was not a sport at that time that was enjoying a lot of growth. But obviously she played a big part in growing the sport. She was somebody that supported the cause and became a very respected not only member of the coaching fraternity itself, but obviously over the years she kind of became an institution at NC State because she's kind of been the face of NC State athletics because she's been there for such a long time and had so much success. When you're talking about someone that made it to the Basketball Hall of Fame, one of only 6 coaches to win more than 700 games, she led a team to an Olympic gold medal in 1988, and then you add to that the way she has courageously battled this hideous disease that took her life. Kay Yow has been somebody that's kind of been front and center for NC State athletics for a long, long time.
Yeah, and also all the work that she's done with the Kay Yow Foundation and all the charity work through NC State and through women's basketball that she's done and that we even worked with back in the fall, raising some money here in Fayetteville for. And she came on this show and was just so appreciative and so nice. And it was one of those situations for us at the time, starting up a new show and having someone like Kay Yow on it, and then to hear the news on Saturday. I never met Coach Yow, but it still affected me in that way because she was so generous and so appreciative of everything that people did for her and the things she did for people.
You know, all of us have been faced with obstacles in our lives, but we always make a big deal out of it. You know, like we have a flat tire or something like that, and we act like it's the end of the world. The people that you really admire, people like Coach Yow, who, you know, she had to fight cancer, breast cancer, for a long, long time. I mean, she was first diagnosed back in 1987. And then it reoccurred 17 years later. But very much like Coach Valvano, she chose to fight the disease publicly so she could set an example for others who really needed to be inspired because, so your doctor tells you got cancer. Let's face it, it's very difficult to come back to. That's a very demoralizing piece of news. But instead of being demoralized publicly, Coach Kay Yow went out front and center and decided to fight the disease and help others who are also going through kind of a similar trauma.
Yeah, and that was very apparent in the days and the hours following her passing away at the age of 66. Now, I just want to get your thoughts and let us know what the reaction was from her team. I mean, I don't know if there's been any. I don't think there's been too many public statements about the team, but do you see? How do you? Things happen and you have to find a way to go on. And her players, especially the ones that have been there for a number of the seniors, have to be affected by this.
Well, I think it's like losing a member of your family for them. A direct member of your family. Kay Yow is more than just a coach to them. So a lot of athletes respect their coach, but they don't necessarily love their coach. NC State's players not only respected Coach Yow over the years, they loved her. I mean, she was more than just their coach. And, perfect illustration of that is the way that they have continued to come back to visit with her year after year after year. So, they took away from their playing experience at NC State more than just basketball and the lessons that they learned on the court. There were bigger lessons to be learned, and so, Kay Yow is very important to them. As for the current team, obviously there's been a short-term grieving process, just as you would see when you lose a member of your family. I think that they're finally going to start trickling out and talking about Coach Yow here in the next couple of days. I think they have a press conference where Coach Glantz will visit with the media, and some of the players are going to be made available as well. But for the last couple of days, obviously we haven't heard a lot from them because they've had to deal with an awful lot since Saturday morning.
Yeah, and at the same time, these are college students and not just, they're student athletes and people too. So you have to, appreciate that and give them their time. I'm talking right now with Tony Haynes, Wolfpack Radio Network. And I guess lastly, Tony, I was, going to see if, I don't know what your relationship with Coach Yow was, but how well you knew her. But, what were your thoughts? How has this affected you?
Well, first I go back a long ways with Coach Yow. Actually, among my first experiences in broadcasting was doing play-by-play for NC State women's basketball. I went to school at NC State, and in the early 80s I decided I wanted to get in the broadcasting business, more specifically sports if possible. And I started working at the campus radio station at NC State, and they had an opening for the play-by-play announcer of Wolfpack women's basketball at that time. They needed somebody to do the games on the station, and fortunately I got the job. And so immediately I was thrust into that role and given the opportunity to work for Coach Yow. And at that time, she really had it going. In the early 80s, NC State and Maryland were the two dominant programs in the ACC. And so that was really an incredible opportunity for me at the beginning of my broadcasting career to call Wolfpack women's basketball and kind of develop a relationship with Coach Yow. And, I would say the same things as everybody else. I mean, she was incredibly gracious, humble woman, a very unselfish person. And she was one of those coaches, and I've been around a few coaches in my day that have been very successful, and the thing that strikes you about them, everything that they say has some significant meaning attached to it. And she was one of those people. She had the ability to really communicate with her teams and convey a certain message that really got their attention. And that's a special gift, and that's a gift that she always had as not only a coach but as a human being as well.
Tony Haynes, NC State Wolfpack Radio Network, joining us here today. Tony, always appreciate the time, and especially in this sad time, we appreciate you taking a few minutes today to give our listeners a feeling of what it was like to know Coach Yow and the impact that she had on everyone she crossed paths with.
Well, you're welcome, Nick. Thank you,
Tony. Thank you. So Tony Haynes, NC State Wolfpack Radio Network. Of course, Coach Yow, 34 seasons as the head coach at NC State, a record of 680 wins, 325 losses. She's one of only 3 women's basketball coaches at D1 to coach 1,000 games at one school. So that was her NC State record. 20 trips to the NCAA tournament, 11 trips to the Sweet 16, and the trip to the Final Four back in 1998. So just a legendary career, not only at NC State, but in the whole sport of collegiate women's basketball. And she will be greatly missed, but obviously remembered very, very fondly by a lot of those whose paths crossed with hers, and including us here at this show. Like I said before, she was so gracious in joining us on the show and helping us raise money for the Kay Yow WBCA Cancer Fund in partnership with the Jimmy V Foundation, and we raised from what I remember, about $3,000 out in front of the studio for that. So we were glad to be a part of it as well. And your thoughts on Coach Yow, and maybe she had an impact on you too. 910-484-5483. We got Court on the line. Court, how are you doing, buddy?